All right, let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. You alluded to this, and of course, this is probably going to have the single biggest impact on our economic future, not just us, but the entire economy. Which is that right now, this is written in Bloomberg. It's a fascinating history, which is that China, this is according again to their analysis, is that going through a financial crisis today, quote, I believe is much more serious than even the global financial crisis in the United States. So they talk specifically about how their housing market and other direct indicators are showing massive slowdown in China, specifically because of housing. Quote, the economy is sputtering under COVID lockdowns. The People's Bank of China has cut interest rates as central bank worldwide increased them, giving investors even more incentive to shift their money abroad. Together, these forces have pushed the yuan down by 8% against the dollar this year, putting it on course for the biggest annual drop since 1994. Here's what this analyst who's predicting a bigger financial crisis says. Quote, China is going through that financial crisis. For us, the play, he's talking about how to make money, is in currency, but he's talking about an imminent and possible Chinese currency collapse. The part of the issue is that, as they actually point out in the pushback, is everybody's always saying the yuan is going to collapse.
Well,
and
this guy's been betting on the collapse since 2014.
Right, so it's
he's like, this time it's going to pay off, so keep that in mind.
I mean, he could be one of these big short, geniuses, or he could just be one of those people who's always saying that China's going to collapse. But hey, the underlying dynamic he's discussing of the slowdown in housing is absolutely correct. I weirdly have a reference to Evergrande in my monologue, which is about lab leak. But, the Evergrande collapse was actually a catastrophic event. And to have all of these ripple effects where I remember before they even stopped trading on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and more, you were seeing some real estate companies, multi-billion-dollar behemoths backed by the CCP, decline by 75, 80% in value, overnight.
Right.
And that explodes, like bonds, it explodes the ability of people, because remember, if we could take it back to that quote-unquote crisis, people had put down cash and were waiting for their apartments. And this is like a high status symbol in Chinese society. So the ripple effects were that there were riots, people were upset. And then you combine that with zero COVID and dramatically lower economic activity. Things are a powder keg right now in China domestically. I have read a report, even in Western China, like in the Uyghurs, and obviously they're already being horrifically treated right now. I mean, their level of lockdown is make Shanghai look like a vacation home.
Wow.
Right. And so that's the whole country, no matter where the flare-up happens or not. And they're also not betting on vaccination at all. They are continuing to bet on zero COVID, which is insanity in the age, especially, it was always stupid, but in the age of Omicron, it's especially stupid, orders of magnitude.
Yeah,
so.
very, very true.
Yeah.
That is very true. Yeah, I mean, just to put some numbers to what you're saying here about the housing market, there was a 40% drop in home sales this year in China.
Wow.
40%. You have people who are demanding their money back over unfinished projects. You have a massive pullback. Now, some of this was actually orchestrated by the government because they saw, okay, we can't continue to have this housing market escalate and escalate and escalate and escalate. We have to pare things back at some point. But can they navigate that in a way that doesn't trigger a gigantic crash? That is a major, that's a huge question. And so you have the housing market, massive pullback. You have those COVID zero policies, and you also have had extreme heat waves that have really impacted their, crop yields and also their power supplies. So they're being hit from all directions right now. To give you some more numbers about the housing market, this was from a different article that I was reading. They were saying that, the housing market has really driven growth in China for the past 2 decades. The Chinese housing market is the largest asset class in the world. So that gives you a sense of how central and how critical this is to the Chinese economy, not to mention the global economy. Now developers are going bust after being deprived of easy credit. Prices are falling. Homeowners are refusing to pay mortgages on unfinished homes. The slump in properties being sold in construction is crippling local governments. This is a really important part because they rely on land sales for income. So the way local governments fund themselves is by selling off land. Now they're unable to do that. So they're going bankrupt and having extreme financial issues. The other thing that they pointed to in this article is they say that the next shoe to drop for China could be falling external demand. So basically, I mean, these things all feed on each other, right?
Interconnected.
If we have a downturn here, if there's a downturn in Europe, obviously energy costs are high, so it's very much expected that people will have less money to buy cheap crap from China. They're gonna be focused on like, let me pay my rent and let me have food on the table and let me not freeze to death. That's a huge issue for the Chinese economy, which obviously depends on being able to export their goods and make a lot of money around the world. So that's the picture as best as we can, as best as we can decipher it of the Chinese economy right now. And again, obviously these things all very interconnected and have a lot of feedback loops that can lead to, global contagion essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.